Now, I know it feels like Game Week 18 has only just started, but there was so much football on Boxing Day, it's pretty much over already. And in this video, I'm going to talk about players to buy and avoid for Game Week 19. All right, then we're going to start by looking at the clean sheet odds according to 11FI. And I don't think there are any real surprises in terms of the teams that appear at the top of this list. You've got Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City and Chelsea. But I think the interesting stuff to look at is not necessarily the teams. I always say this about these clean sheet odds models, to be fair. But the interesting thing to look at is not necessarily the teams at the top, but the teams that are just off the top, because the top teams are always predictable. Arsenal, Liverpool, Man City, probably not at the moment, but clean sheet odds wise, they're probably always going to be top just with, you know, how good of a team they have been historically. Although obviously that's not been the case recently. And then Chelsea as well with the great fixture run they've got. I don't think saying those four teams are the top teams for clean sheet odds is much of a surprise. For the teams that come below that, we've got Crystal Palace, Nottingham Forest, Fulham and Newcastle. And I'd say those four teams are interesting for clean sheet odds because they've got good, cheap defenders that might be quite differential, I'm going to say, and I'm going to talk about some of them now. So far this season, Nottingham Forest are the third best defence in the league for expected goals conceded. And the fixture run they've got coming up is not too bad at all. And I might be about to go back on my word that I said in previous videos that I might be due some stick for. But I've said previously that I think Onana and Pickford will be the top scoring goalkeepers come the end of the season. But I think there's a third contender for that top scoring goalkeeper spot. And I've got to say, I think Sales looks absolutely excellent. Number one, I think he's a really good goalkeeper. And not just that, but Nottingham Forest are obviously proving to be a team that are strong defensively. They've kept 7 clean sheets. They've just kept, by the way, they've just kept a clean sheet against Tottenham, who are a team that have been scoring in pretty much every single game they've played this season. So to keep a clean sheet against Tottenham is no mean feat. And I think that's the final tick in the box for me to suggest that outside of the top teams, Nottingham Forest are by far and away the best defence. And Sells at 4.7 million, 8.7% ownership, actually classes in my mind as a differential because he's less than 10% owned. He's under 5 million. He's got good fixtures coming up. And he's not just keeping a decent amount of clean sheets either. He's making a decent amount of saves. You can see there his saves per 90 is 2.83. That means he's getting pretty close to achieving saves bonus every game that he plays. Yeah, I really like the Forest defence and I really like Sales in goal. My favourite outfield defender for Nottingham Forest is probably Nikola Milenkovic. Now, Ola Aina is currently the most expensive. He's risen all the way up to 5 million now, with how popular he's become. But I actually think Milenkovic, even though I've got Aina in my team actually, I actually think Milenkovic is the best Nottingham Forest defender. And I think he's proved that with his goal threat. Now, Aina, I know, has also scored a couple of goals this season. But when you look at the underlying numbers and how dangerous Milenkovic is from set pieces, I think he's probably the better option over Aina. And yeah, we just spoke about the Forest fixtures and how good they are defensively. 17 games, 7 clean sheets for a 4.6 million defender. So he has got, if you just think about this way, because I think this is quite a good way to think about defenders in the game. So he is a defender that has gotten, so far this season, returns through 3 different means, right? He scored goals, got assists, and kept clean sheets. And if you add those up, he's got 3 attacking returns, 7 clean sheets. So that's 10 returns, whether that be an attacking return or a clean sheet, from 17 appearances. And if you were to, I don't know, change that for a striker, for example, a 4.5 million striker who has got 10 returns from 17 starts, 10 goals, say something like that. I know a clean sheet and an assist is not quite as points bearing as a goal, but hopefully you can see kind of the route I'm going down with this conversation. With that in mind, 10 returns from 17 starts with a decent run of fixtures coming up. I think Milenkovic is a great option. And for me, if I'm looking to target the Forest defence, he is the one to go for. If we just look back at the clean sheet odds quickly, one of the teams that is, well, the team that is the best of the rest outside of those, well, it's kind of top 4 that we've got at the moment is Crystal Palace. And I think there's one absolute standout from that team at the moment defensively, and that's Daniel Munoz. I think, to be honest, Crystal Palace started poorly because quite a lot changed with them defensively, particularly at the start of the season. They lost Anderson and started playing, well, that back three with Chalobah and Lacroix. I just think it took some time for them to adjust to being comfortable in that setup. And with Ismaila Sarr coming to the fore in the team now, that's given Daniel Munoz a bit more freedom to attack. And in recent games, I think pretty much every set of highlights in every game I've seen from Crystal Palace over the last couple of months, Daniel Munoz has definitely had a pretty clear chance of a potential goal or an assist. He's looking really attacking. In fact, remembering back to when everyone was buying Ait-Nouri because he looked super attacking, I think Munoz is as attacking as Ait-Nouri is, but he's also from a team that I think are going to keep more clean sheets. I really do think Crystal Palace on this run are going to come to the fore and improve themselves to be what we were expecting them to be, I think, at the start of the season. You know, they finished really strongly last year under their new manager, Glasner. You're expecting them to kind of kick on and be one of the sort of top mid-table teams, but they didn't start that way this season. But yeah, I do think Munoz is a great option. 4 attacking returns from 17 starts is, I think, is only going to get bigger and better. And yeah, I think he's a great option. And the fact, to be fair, conceding 21 goals from 17 games, also I don't think is actually that bad. So even though they had a pretty poor start to the season, you know, that's still a good, I'd say, record of goals conceded compared to games played. Anyway, I think Munoz is a great option and you should really consider him for your team. I also think Howson of Bournemouth is a pretty clever pick as well. Just kept a clean sheet, gone 0-0 obviously against Crystal Palace. I think the fixtures coming up are not too bad, but I just think at his price point, he is a player that you can just have in your team and hold him, particularly obviously with Senesi being out for a long period of time. And also, with just how well he has played during his time in that Bournemouth team, I would suggest that Senesi is going to have a tough time getting back in that team. I think Huijsen is fantastic. I genuinely think Bournemouth have got a couple absolute wonder kids in their defence in Zabarnyi and Huijsen. I think they're two really, really competent young centre-backs who are already really good, but I think have super potential to grow and become a couple of the best centre-backs in the world. I genuinely do think that. The fixtures for Bournemouth are not, I wouldn't say amazing coming up, but at 4.3 million, like most people have, you know, most people have a few defenders around this price point and will bench and chop and change, etc. And I think Huijsen is another great option to have. Bournemouth, probably, I'd say, one of the stronger defences in the league. I wouldn't say they're the strongest. Definitely, I don't think they compare to example for Nottingham Forest. But I do think they're a good defence. And at 4.3 million, he's great value as well. A couple of things to talk about on the projected goals. One of the things I wanted to mention is that looking at projected goals data, most of the top teams in the league are kind of predictable. Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, Newcastle, Spurs, Villa, Man United. You know, all of the top teams you'd expect are there or thereabouts in terms of the top teams for projected goals, right? But again, similar to what we did with the clean sheet odds, what I think is quite interesting to look at is the best of the rest. And right now, I'd say the best of the rest is Crystal Palace. And I've just spoken about Munoz, for example, and Crystal Palace being, you know, on the upper end of the table. They're 9th, so I guess that counts as the top half. Top half of the table in terms of projected goals coming up with their good fixture run. And I think that might also suggest, I'm not going to recommend them specifically in this video or talk about them specifically because I've already spoken about Sarr, for example. I think he's one of the best Palace options. But you've obviously got Mateta and Eze, who seems to be back from injury now. But I don't think they've caused me enough excitement to consider them options just yet. But I guess with Eze, and I'll come on to a point that I want to talk about when looking at projected goals. Right now, outside of Salah and Palmer, there aren't really many midfielders that are exciting me at the moment. Which is why when I talked about Saka replacements last week, I was saying I genuinely think the best replacement for Saka was one of the sub 6 million midfielders and then upgrade a defender or a forward. I genuinely thought that was the right way to play it. And from what we've seen so far from Gameweek 17, that was the right way to do it with Bruno Fernandes getting his red card right. But genuinely, that's my point. I don't see any midfielders that are massively exciting me outside of Palmer and Salah, which leaves the door open to have 2, maybe 3 of the sub 6 million midfielders in your team. Sarr, Ahmad, Enzo, Rodgers, players of that nature, Semenyo as well. But also maybe potentially with him being back and fit in the team, he's been disappointing this season so far, I'll admit. Maybe Eze could be an option again. That's kind of what I want to speak about on this projected goals. The fact that there aren't many midfielders that are exciting me. And with Eze being back fit, Crystal Palace having a good fixture run, looking decent for projected goals, certainly compared to other teams in the division that are below them, I think he could be a good option. I sound a bit drab and depressy, don't I, saying there's not many midfield options in the game at the moment. So what I wanted to do, instead of talking necessarily about loads of attackers to buy, though it might also be useful to look at teams to target. And what we've got here is a view of expected goals against over the last 2 months in the Premier League. So I filtered this since the beginning of November. Some teams on this list, to be fair, have played 9 games and others have played 8 games. But honestly, the numbers are clear enough to me that this is a clear list of the worst teams in the league for expected goals conceded. Some of them are actually a little bit surprising and some of them not so much. And basically what this list is suggesting, Ipswich are actually just below this list. What it's suggesting is there are 3 teams at the moment in the league. Well, a couple of teams definitely to target in the league at the moment. That's Tottenham, Southampton, and Leicester. I'd say, to be honest, even Ipswich are a team to target. They don't quite appear on this list, but they're just below it. For me, if you're looking for the teams to target at the moment, it's Tottenham and the 3 promoted teams. And outside of that, the 4th best worst defence in the league, outside of Tottenham and promoted teams, is Man City. So I know we've speaking about the Man City downfall for a while. That's the big media narrative. We all know what's going on there. But I genuinely think now, particularly from a defensive point of view, Man City have become a team to genuinely target. And I certainly wouldn't be benching players who are playing Man City, for example. I know we've just seen some clean sheet odds there that suggest they're still one of the top teams in the league for clean sheet odds. I obviously don't necessarily agree with that because you look at the last 2 months, they're the 4th worst defence in the league. Sorry, out of excitement, I hit my microphone there. But hopefully that was useful just to look at potential teams to target. Like I said, there's not a whole lot of players I want to talk about in terms of attacking assets to buy at the moment. Finally then, he's not massively owned at the moment, but I know quite a lot of engaged managers will have Raul Jimenez in their teams at the moment. And he's the one I really wanted to pick out because I just think he's a sell at this point. If you still have Raul Jimenez in your team and you've kept the faith, I think it was the right thing to do, to be honest, not actually rushing him out of your team, because I feel like, I don't think he got a penalty in the Premier League, but with the last penalty Fulham took in the Premier League being missed by Andreas Pereira, it did make me think that Raul Jimenez would be the natural taker for them for Fulham now. And that was all great until Muniz came on the scene. So he's come off the bench, I think, 2 games in a row now and scored. And I just think he's going to start the next game. I think it's pretty natural to believe that, right? With a substitute striker coming off the bench in the last 2 games and scoring, for me, I think Muniz has deserved to start. And we all know how good Muniz was last season as well. So it's not like he's a poor player who's just hit a random purple patch of form. Or maybe he is a bit purple patchy. But yeah, I do think Raul Jimenez's time as the Fulham starting striker is probably up. So if I had him in my team, I'd be looking to offload. All right, and that's the end of the video. I hope you enjoyed that and found it useful. I apologise for the kind of dodgy lighting we've got here. I'm back home at my family home for Christmas at the moment, staying in my old childhood bedroom that's now my dad's office. That'll change. I'm going back home tonight, so the next video you'll see will be from my normal setup with proper lighting, etc. So yeah, hopefully you've been able to deal with it for this video. And yeah, I think that's pretty much everything. I hope you found that useful and enjoyed it. If you did, please leave me a like rating. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with anything I've said in that video. I'd be interested to hear it. Yeah, I think that's everything. If you haven't already and you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could subscribe to the Goal No Goal channel. I'm pointing at this little jug here, but I think the subscribe button should just be there. Thank you very much for watching, and I will catch you in my next video.